I'm here in New York City on the beautiful Little Island Garden. But let me ask you watching this, can you tell if this image is real? Can you tell if my voice is my own? Can you tell if any of this image is real? You might be laughing watching this wherever you're watching, but can you tell? We live in a world of AI. 1 year from now, 6 months from now, maybe a month from now, can you tell if any of this is real? What does it mean to be human in an AI-filled world? These are the questions we have to be asking. These are the questions we're talking about today. Take a listen. We want to hear your thoughts down below.
Welcome. My name is Jonathan Brush. I'm the president and CEO of Unbound. I'm delighted to be joined by David Rethemeyer. David works for Unbound, also does some small business consulting on his own, is a graduate of Unbound in the program, but also holds a master's and an MBA, so holds an advanced degree. We know him as Unbound as all things technical, in addition to about 18 other roles that we have in play, from voiceover stuff to other things. But he's the guy that helps us with a lot of our equipment. He does a lot of our IT work, and basically, David, almost everything technical except coding. Is that a fair analysis?
To an extent, I have dabbled in varying realms of technology for a long time. I do not have necessarily a lot of specific technical education like a lot of people do, but I kind of know just enough to be dangerous, as quite a few people that I know would say.
That might be the intro that we need to note here and let you know, in case you didn't catch from that resume, neither David nor I are AI experts. And what I mean by that is that, honestly, I don't know, David probably more so than me, but I was not paying attention, nor did I much care about AI at all until like the last 6 weeks. So if that gives you an idea of how fast things are moving here. And so you say, well, that's interesting. Why do you think that you're smart enough to hold a webinar if you guys are just, you're not experts, you just pay attention to this? And here's the answer to that question. In the last 6 weeks, in fact, way earlier than that, but as soon as this kind of hit our radar, it became obvious to me that it was going to become educational malpractice if we did not immediately pay attention to AI and the implications for AI in terms of what it means for our students, and then consequently then what it means for our families and for our world. I have been in education, specifically higher education, for well over 20 years. So almost the entirety of my career has been in higher education. I know how it works, both the traditional and non-traditional side, and I know the speed with which it moves. I have never seen anything disrupt education so fast as AI. We're talking about something that was simply not being discussed in education circles before Christmas and well into the new year. In the last couple of weeks, basically causing entire school systems and universities and programs to totally reevaluate what it means to educate students and how they're going to be able to educate students. So that was my first indicator that we're onto something that's kind of a big deal here. David's a technical person in the sense that David loves technology. He's really good at it. I obviously run a company that delivers educational services through technology, right? So we do live events, but we also do a lot of online stuff. And so I'm no Luddite. I appreciate what technology does for me. I appreciate the fact that I can be talking to you about what I consider to be a really important subject through this technology. I use technology fairly well. I mean, I'm not a technical expert, but I can get my way around most things. I can fix and troubleshoot most things, and if I can, I call David. And so I tell you that because now here's the other side of this. When I use a cell phone until it breaks. So I'm not adopting the newest cell phone, right? I get one and then I keep it until it's not functioning anymore, and then I call David and he tells me which one to buy. When I get that new cell phone, I try to wipe as many apps off of it as possible. And I only add apps back in as I need them. So I try to be really deliberate about how I use technology in terms of technology being something that I'm using for a tool and not using me. Okay. So I say that because I want you to understand I am not a fancy babble type of guy like this, like, oh, this is a new thing, I got to grab it. Right. But I'm not a, don't use technology is bad type of person. I'm somebody who really appreciates modern technology and what it does for me, but I'm always a little bit skeptical of it. I'm not slow to change on some things, but I have to be pretty convinced that change is necessary before I really want to move on it. I give you all that preface to tell you this. I firmly believe that what we are witnessing in AI is going to make the internet look like a very small change on the grand scheme of things. I think this is one of the key pivotal technological turns of our history, of our existence. And I think it will, from this point forward, dominate almost everything that we do. And I say that with a small amount of excitement, a larger amount of trepidation, but just a real feeling of certainty in terms of knowing that this is going to impact your life, whether you like it or not, whether you decide to participate in it or not. And so it's going to be really essential for people, and especially from our viewpoint, for people of faith, to really get a good grasp of what AI is and what it does and to understand it. And what we're trying to do in this webinar, normally we do webinars, we have some pretty fancy decks that we have some really great people that create for us, that we have some audiovisual stuff and all those kinds of things. We don't have this. This looks more like a raw podcast recording. David and I didn't rehearse this stuff ahead of time. And the reason we're doing this and we rushed it out so fast is that we are not experts, but we have spent a lot of hours in the last 6 weeks spending a lot of time researching AI and trying to ask questions. Our staff has spent countless hours recently talking about this and experimenting with and trying these different AI programs and trying to see what they do. And all of those things are kind of, ongoing. And we just felt like, hey, we need to pause. And since it's moving so fast, we need to pause and take what we've learned to date and share it with as many people as possible in the hopes that this will not answer all your AI questions, but it will at least get you started and maybe give you some good framework to ask them those questions. Let me then go from there to giving you a couple of examples of why we think this is such a big deal. First of all, it's a big deal from education. And this is where everybody sort of got the first whiff of it, especially in educational circles. Right now, we're at a point where the free version of Chat GPT, right? So you can get a paid version, was GPT-4. But even the free version, which in many ways is less sophisticated than the paid version, is now very accessible to anybody. If you would tell Chat GPT to write you a 500-word essay on the Boston Tea Party and its implications for the United States of America, and you gave it that prompt, it would write you a really good essay in 500 words. If you ask it the same prompt again, it would write you a slightly different essay. If you ask it to write that prompt in the tone of a high school AP student, it would change it subtly to do that. If you ask it to write it in the tone of an English literature professor, it would slightly do that. And you could put the same prompt in and get slightly different things each time. In other words, we're to the point where it's almost impossible to detect whether a work was done by a student or was done by AI. So obviously this has major implications for academic integrity, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So that's one, and so people can sort of instantly say, well, yeah, that would sort of change things a little bit. Second thing is, we're to the point now that the AIs that are out there can code faster and more accurately than most people. So David's going to talk about this, I think, in a minute, but we're at this very unusual place where if you're a coder, which was the hot profession until about January, you are very much in a situation where you're going, I don't know if they're going to need me very soon here. And we've got situations where people are coding complete apps who don't know how to code by just asking the AI to code it. And then that's code is working very well. People that don't know how to code are coding things for their email accounts. They're coding plugins for different programs, all those things. And so we've got to the point where we have almost a complete democratization of coding. So that's interesting. If you're a creator, I mean, somebody like me can write some really sophisticated code now with the help of AI. It also means if you're a coder that things are looking a little bit interesting. And so there's some implications there. Here's one where I think helps people understand a little bit better about the implications of AI. We are a program that does an alternative education program where we help students earn credits so they can transfer in to get a full degree. But we also help students get certifications that are quite powerful if they don't want to get a degree. Now, we do that in a hybrid type situation where we deliver a lot of the academics online, but we insist and require that our students show up at some live events because we don't think you can be truly educated unless you're talking to somebody in front of you. So that means that for our live events, we're frequently booking a lot of flights for students all over the country to come into one place. For our national conference, we will book flights from all over the country to all come into one airport at a specific time. We have somebody that does that, and it takes her like 2 weeks of full-time work to book those flights. And one of the things from a business perspective for us is if we were going to scale that, if we were going to say quadruple our student body, we probably have to quadruple our staff because we're looking at some significant time. You can't book those flights months and months at a time. You typically have to book them in a certain window. It has to happen during a certain time. So, instead of one person working 2 weeks, you might have to have 4 or 5 people working 2 weeks to get all those flights booked. The latest release from GPT-4 allows it to use plugins. Two of those plugins are travel apps. And so to put that in context, what we could do now, theoretically, is we could upload a list of our students and their names and home airports into the AI. And then we can just simply tell the AI, book us flights from all these home airports into the GRR airport code. They all have to land within this window, and we don't want to spend more than this per ticket. There can be no more than, there can only be one stopover for each flight. And then we could push, so we can send that to the AI in less than a few minutes. That would come back all in a cart in Expedia or Kayak, where we could review those and then push purchase and buy them all at once. So if you're following along at home, that means that something that currently is taking us one person 2 weeks to do, we can now do in less than 15 minutes. Not only that, we could quadruple or more the amount of things that we're doing, and it would still take less than 15 minutes. There's people on here that say, yeah, I've already tried ChatGPT. And there's people on here that's like, AI stands for what? Or, it's my neighbor's like, my neighbor's a farmer, and he says, I know what AI stands for and has nothing to do with computers. And if you're a farmer, you know what he's talking about. But this question is AI easy and practical enough for me to use it today? Or do I have to be like, is this one of those new tech tools that's only cool, for the cool tech kids? Do I have to be super technical, or do I have to have a lot of knowledge to be able to use AI?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and the answer is very definitively no. You don't have to be very particularly technical to be able to be good at using it. I think that the easiest way to think about AI and start using it, if you're just looking for a starting point in how to start getting yourself familiar with this kind of technology, is instead of going to Google for a lot of your answers, start going to AI like ChatGPT and see what kind of answers that you get. Because normally, if you are Googling looking for a piece of information, so for example, I have a specific part on my car that breaks. And so I Google, 2014 Ford Focus, mirror control lever or something like that. So I Googled that part and like the specific malfunction that it's having. Then I have to go through and I have to sort through all of the different articles. I have to try to find which ones are relevant to my specific model of car, because a lot of them aren't going to be relevant to my specific model. And I'm going to have to most likely sift through a ton of ads while I'm doing that and try to sort through what's actual relevant information and what's just general and not actually relevant for me. So it's a lot more of an involved process when you're Googling, which can be a good thing in some aspects because you're having to go through and you're having to do research. However, what ChatGPT can do, and a lot of these other models that are live connected to the internet can do, is they can take all of that information and they can just summarize it for you in bullet points. And they can go out and they can look for that information and they can say, oh, okay, so for this, if this specific issue is happening on your 2014 Ford Focus, here are the first 3 troubleshooting steps to check it out. And if it happens to be the thing from step number 2, here's where you can go to find that new part. And this is where you can find that for the best price. So it's able to condense a lot of that information and take it and put it in a format that's a lot more useful. Again, I will stress that very much, especially in the current free version of ChatGPT, it will get a lot of things wrong. So always make sure to fact check it, especially if you're doing something that could potentially cost you money, like fixing your car. But use cases like that are really, really helpful for AI, and you can do a lot of things and save a lot of time for not only yourself, but also for your coworkers or your friendly neighborhood IT staff if you end up asking questions to AI instead of just trying to figure it out on your own and taking a lot more time.
One of the things as you use AI is a couple of things we would really keep in mind. First of all, it's not always accurate. So David said that several times. I'll give you 2 examples. This is a real life example that was made the rounds a little bit ago. If you ask AI how many bears the Russians have sent into space, it will tell you the names of the bears, how much they weighed, what rockets they went up on, this, how many times they went around this Earth, and the dates. Spoiler alert, as far as we know, unless AI is tapped into some Russian dark web, the Russians never sent bears into space. So in other words, it's an extraordinarily compelling, mind-blowing amount of detail about something that doesn't exist. And if that seems a little too far-fetched for you, we've found that if you ask AI about Unbound, it will give you a lot of great information that we really agree with about Unbound, and it will link to our websites, which is beunbound.us, right? It will also tell you about a bunch of programs that we've never run, we don't currently run, and it will also link you to those sites, which are beunbound.us/ and then these other programs. I don't know why it thinks we run those programs. We've never run them. We've not written about them. We don't talk about them. They're not bad programs, but they're not programs that we run or interested in, and the links are all dead. The programs that we don't have look just as compelling as the programs we do on ChatGPT. So there's some really interesting hallucinations going on there. So first of all, double check that. The second is, you would call there was a security breach recently on GPT stuff. And so just like you should be wise about this anyhow, but anything you put in the internet, you should consider public. So you should probably not ask ChatGPT how you can quietly kill the neighbor's dog that's barking at night, right? That's possible to become public. And so you should keep in mind that anything you feed into ChatGPT at some level could become public in terms of just security. And it's also pretty interesting exactly how ChatGPT is using that. And so whether it's turning around, David's analysis is that ChatGPT is not using it, but GPT-4 might use it. And so how that input is being used in other places is something to keep in mind. So I would be cautious about putting things into ChatGPT that you want to be private. You should think that with the internet overall. Okay, so there's a couple questions here. Jocelyn, back to Jocelyn's question. When will our desire for streamlined convenience not trump all other principles, and at what cultural cost? This is going to sound depressing, but I want you to hang with me. So stick with me to the end here, okay? The cultural cost in this is going to be incalculable. There's going to be a breathtaking amount of cultural cost. And I don't see any way we step off that train. And the only option you have here is that you don't have to pay that cultural cost, but the culture will pay it. And that's why we're doing this webinar. You're going to have to pay attention, because this is going to have an implication for you. So here's some things that I want you to practically think about, and then we're going to hit some questions. And but I want to kind of pull some of the things we did together here into a final sort of, I don't know if it's called arms, but kind of a reminder for everybody. Because also have Ines is saying, what about essays and homework and papers which are required from students? How are students going to learn if they don't do their own work? All right, if you're a student or if you're a parent, listen to me carefully. There's three things that an AI-dominated world is going to make more and more and more and more and more and more important. And if you do these three things, I don't know how we're going to negotiate and navigate all this stuff, but I think I'm feeling pretty good about these things being attached to principle. Things are true no matter what. The first is that real knowledge has actually just become more important, right? Pre to AI, you would say, well, I don't have to know that kind of stuff because I can just Google it. Post AI, you're going to have to know that stuff because it's going to be harder and harder to tell if it's real or not. And the way that you can be sure it's real is, and it's blurred out here, but there's a bookcase right here. And that stuff was all written. Everything in that bookcase was written pre-AI. And AI can't, at this point, get in and change those books. Now, might be able to reprint them a different way. But I mean, it can't change those books, right? So actually, book knowledge is going to become more important, not less important. Practical learning is going to become more important, not less important. And not only that, and so hear me carefully, if you are a student, understanding that inherently is going to give you a colossal advantage over your peers who do not understand that knowledge is inherently good. If you are a teacher or a parent, it's not going to be enough to teach your child things. You're going to have to teach your child to value knowledge for its own sake, because there's going to be so many opportunities to cheat and get AI to do all the work for you. And that will actually enable you to go ahead and use AI. And then you'll be able to use AI in your job. And AI is going to be able to do all these things. But then you become a drone. You don't become a leader. You end up being carried along with the river of culture. You're not going to be able to swim on your own. You're not going to be able to get out and get on shore when you want. And so it's going to be really, really essential that we focus on real knowledge and we teach people to care about real knowledge, right? That's going to be more essential than the knowledge itself, is teaching that ability to care, right? To be able to learn and care why. That's number one. Number two is the physical world is going to be essential to be connected to. So if you want to rebel against AI right now, you should do push-ups. If you want to rebel against AI right now, you should go take a walk. If you want to rebel against AI right now, you should start to raise chickens. Remember that no matter what, God programmed chickens to make eggs, and they do it and has nothing to do with AI. You go listen to the birds, go down to the river, go float in a canoe, go hiking, go outside, go for a run, do some pull-ups, do some push-ups. There is a physical world. We are embodied people. God made us in bodies for a reason. God himself came down in the form of a body. and that's an important part of reality. And AI does not make it less important. It may obscure it, but only if you choose to be obscured. And so you're going to have to care deeply about real knowledge, and you're going to have to stay in touch with the physical world. And finally, you're going to have to stay in touch with real humans. Now, if you're a Christian and you're part of a church community, we're already good at this. This is going to become more essential, and it's going to look more different and in some ways strange. And therefore, the contrast is going to be sharper, and the desire to join us is going to be deeper, because people are going to get zombified. There is no, if people got addicted to old video games that look like Doom, they are totally going to get addicted to video games that look like you're in a movie. That's what the new video games are going to look like. They're going to look just as real as the faces you're looking at right now. And the people in those games are going to make decisions that make them look just like humans, right? There's going to be that level of sophistication. And there's going to be people that go in there and don't come out. And those people are going to need help, because it doesn't change the reality of the world that they live in. It doesn't mean that the things that are true are no longer true. And the people that can help them are the people that remain knowledgeable about what it takes to be human. And those are people who still connect with humans. So you need to double down on your human interaction. You need to double down on your personal relationships. And you need to really focus on those. Now, I'm going to submit to you that if you do those three things, that you will keep the perspective necessary to decide when and where you use AI, and decide when to opt out. We used to do videos a long time ago that we had the tagline, "Be deliberate." And the idea was that, there's a big difference between people who deliberately think about this versus people who just get carried along by the current, right? I live on a river. I love to canoe. I used to do a lot of whitewater. And whitewater instructors would say, you want to be going faster than the current, or you want to be going slower than the current. You will die if you're going the same speed as the current. If you go the same speed as the current, you get wanged into rocks, you get sucked into holes, all kinds of bad things happen. You get pulled through strainers. If you're going slower than the current, you can make decisions and you can maneuver. If you're going faster than the current, you can maneuver, but you can't be the same speed as the current. We have to remember this in terms of what's going on here. We have to be faster than AI in the sense that we have to learn really quickly. We have to be slower than AI, saying, okay, you can do that, but do I want to do that? But you can't move at the same speed as AI, or you'll just kind of do whatever it tells you to. So how can I master this artificial intelligence without becoming a major temptation in my life? I think you have to constantly ask what you want to use AI for, and do you need it to do that? When you stay in control here, where you're thinking like, this is what I want to do, oh, AI can help me get there. Now AI becomes a powerful tool. If you're like, oh, cool, it can do this, now AI is running you, right? There's a subtle but very important difference between the two. Does that make sense, David? Do you have anything to add to that in terms of how do you stay away from the temptation of AI?
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I think just viewing it as a tool, as a means to an end, and understanding the methodology of what is actually behind it, I think is really, really helpful. For example, like going back to the calculator argument of back in the olden days when personal size calculators were just becoming a thing, and teachers were saying, well, you're never going to have one of these in your pocket. Well, guess what? You ended up having one of those in your pocket. However, that doesn't remove the importance of still like knowing at least some mental math. Now, most of us aren't going to be able to do trigonometry in our heads, but still the importance of being able to have some knowledge of mental math when you're plugging something into a calculator and then it spits out a result, and then being able to say, based on what I do know about math and what I was trying to do here, I don't think that number looks quite right. Let me double check this. And so having an understanding of the concepts behind what the tool is helping you to accomplish is going to be extremely helpful.
Andrew asks, in the context of the Imago Dei, and one of the attributes of the Imago Dei is creativity. AI is doing most of the work that requires creativity, taking the human touch out of the process. How should we prepare and cultivate a different level of creativity? So I don't know that I know the answer to that, Andrew. It's a good question. I think that one thing that we have to keep in mind that is, as amazing as AI is, and as amazing as it gets, and the kinds of things it does things a lot faster, right? But kind of back to my car analogy, right? I mean, like obviously a car moves you much faster than you could possibly move in your own two legs, right? And that transforms everything. And it may be able to move you there on its own, thinking on its own through AI. But you still have to decide where you're going. And that deciding where you're going means that you still remain in charge of the plot. And as a Christian, I don't think that changes no matter what our technological overlords say that it does, that they're going to do, right? I believe that supersedes human ability in that sense of that ability to decide where we're going, and the fact that God remains in charge. Let me use an analogy. When I hear people talk about science fiction and AI, they almost always talk about Skynet and Terminator, right? They talk about the robots coming to kill us all, and I don't know that that's incorrect. I mean, possibly that's the way things go, right? But I think a better analogy in terms of science fiction at the moment is actually Star Wars. So if you've watched Star Wars, and especially The Mandalorian, right? Think about droids in the Star Wars world. So you've got a couple different kinds, right? In The Mandalorian, and if you're a real geek, if it was also in The Empire Strikes Back, you have IG-88, and that's an assassin droid. And he's faster than everybody else, and he can target better than everybody else, and he's a pretty hot bounty hunter and all this kind of stuff, and that's not a good thing, right? That droid will kill you. And there's going to be some AI out there that can kill you. I mean, there's going to be some AI out there that's evil and nefarious, and you're not going to want any part of, right? So there's some of that. But it's also worth noting that, IG-88 gets burned up by lava. So there's that aspect of it. There's the astromech droids like R2-D2 that you can't understand, and they do super important things. And apparently they keep people from dying when they're in hyperspace in the Star Wars universe. And there's going to be AI like that. There's going to be AI that we don't fully comprehend what's going on. We can't completely understand them, but it allows us to do stuff that we like to do in ways that we don't fully understand and that people like you and I can do. So in other words, it's like a coding thing, right? I don't really understand code. I don't understand how code works, but now literally I could code an iPhone app. And so there's going to be that side of it, part of it. Then there's like the droids like C-3PO, right? Who's very human in so many ways. He has a personality. He has fears. He has concerns and worries. He does some cool things. He can speak whatever he says. He can speak 3 million languages and protocols and all that kind of stuff. So he does things that no human can carry around 3 million different dialects, right? But here's the thing, Andrew, that I think is important to note. C-3PO is never the star of the show. C-3PO never drives the plot. He helps the plot along occasionally. He plays a role in it, but he's not the focus of it. And as people of faith, that's the way it's going to be for us too. Now, one last analogy from that: if you watch The Mandalorian, there's the lady that repairs his ship and all that kind of stuff that he lands and all that, and she runs the shop. That's pretty interesting. That's a blue collar lady who doesn't look like a highly technical person who's turning wrenches on spaceships, and yet her entire world is run by droids, right? She's got a droid in the corner. She's got a droid that helps with the tools. She's got a droid that she says to do stuff. She has a droid that helps her scam other people and the times they do things. She has a droid that goes and finds parts for the Mandalorian. It's pretty interesting. Droids are fully integrated into her world, but she runs the shop. She's the point there. Mando doesn't land, and the droids are comic relief. They're a side stuff, but it's that lady that he talks to. It's that lady that gets in the ship. It's that lady that fixes his stuff. Okay, I think it's not that I think Star Wars is a totally accurate reflection of reality here. Don't get me wrong. But I think that those analogies are pretty interesting in terms of thinking about what AI is and isn't, right? It's going to do some really wild technical stuff. It does not keep us from being human. It will not become human, and it will not be the central part of the plot. If you watch the episode of The Mandalorian with IG-88 shooting stuff, that's a dominant part of that story, but the story doesn't end there. And so we may go through a time here where that's the dominant part of the story because all the marbles break loose or because something goes wrong. That's not the end of the story. That's not the point of the plot. That's not the hero of the story. And as people of faith, we know that in ways that our secular counterparts don't, but they're going to be desperate to find out about. Ben asked a question that I don't know the answer to, David. So what are your thoughts on the filters that companies such as Microsoft has put in place on Bing AI, or that Google's attempting to put on Lambda? Do you think it is possible to put unbiased filters on AI? I don't have any context to answer that question. So David, is there anything you know about or want to take a shot at?
It's not something that I have fully researched into, so I probably will not have the most informed take on this at the end of the day. But from what I understand, it's that pretty much all of the makers of AI are essentially trying to make it so that their AI does not end up having a perceived ideology or ideological bias in any of the opinion, like quote unquote opinions that it holds when you ask it about some sort of controversial issue. And so they're trying to sort of keep a middle ground in that sense. And I think that is in some senses a good idea, in the senses that you don't want to end up having an AI that is perceived as being aligned to any particular political party particularly, but is like aligned to any particular ideology. I think can be potentially quite dangerous and have some very interesting implications for both the company and for the people who are using the AI. But also, I'm not sure if it's entirely possible for humans, and I'm not sure if it's entirely possible for AI to be completely unbiased when you are asking it about matters like that. And so, long story short, I think that it's an interesting idea that I think has some flaw in just the whole concept of just bias in general. That gets into a whole other philosophical rabbit trail that we won't chase here today. But long story short, I think it will be interesting. I'm not entirely sure how it's going to work, but guess we'll find out.
Ben, I would just add to that, and for anybody else listening, think about this. AI runs off of information that's out there. Bad news is, in a fallen world, most of that information is bad. But in some ways, this is a call to arms as Christians to create better content. So if any of you are out there going, I'm not going to write, I'm not going to create stuff now, AI is going to do all that, I would just vehemently, aggressively, passionately disagree with you and say, no. Right now, especially right now, you need to be writing blogs and creating videos and recording stuff and putting content out there that has a Christian worldview, that talks about the good, the true, and the beautiful, and all those things, because AI is going to be pulling from that. I mean, AI is going to be, if you're going to use AI, you should be talking to it about God. You should be telling it what you believe and what you think. I mentioned my photographer friend earlier. He's been, telling AI, he's basically been preaching the gospel to AI, and the results he gets are gospel filtered coming back, right? Well, that's true for him, but there's an implication here that may be true for other people who are asking things. A lot of people have observed that AI has a pretty firm grasp on Orthodox Christianity. If you ask it about the Trinity, if you ask it about Jesus, if you ask it about the resurrection, it's got pretty Orthodox stuff in a lot of cases that you would say, yeah, my preacher would say the same thing. Well, that's because somewhere out there, people have some good content out about it. And that good content outweighs the bad. So there's a real need here for people to input good stuff. And so that actually sets up our next question here, which is, Chloe asked, do you think with how technological our generation already is, that AI is going to help us in the long run or not, especially in regards to future generations? I don't know, Chloe. I would say that, did social media help us or not? I think most people would say no right now. And that's true. And yet, did you delete your social media account? Like there's an aspect of social media that allows us to stay connected in ways we haven't done before. It certainly allows us here in Unbound to connect with our students in ways that we haven't been able to before, and to our other people. It's allowed us to get out messages. It's allowed businesses to run. It allows people that don't have a platform to have a platform, which sometimes is good, sometimes is bad. Is it good or bad? I'd say it's a mix. And I think that this is going to be the same way, but that's always the case. The printing press allowed us to print Bibles, and then we also used it to print pornography and Mein Kampf, right? In the Communist Manifesto. And so, TV has got all kinds of filth on it, but it's also, the way you watch The Chosen, and that's having a real impact on a lot of people. There's always mixed bag here. And so I think my kind of perspective on that is, it is like, there's a point here where we can kind of fight against it and talk to our elected officials and talk to heads of companies and say, hey, think about this and be cautious. There's a time that people did that with nuclear power, and it had some good implications and some good results. And so that's worth paying attention to. But we also live under the shadow of nuclear war. And so, a nuclear plant can give us some really clean energy and make a lot of things run like AI, but also can launch a missile. And, we have to kind of live in the shadow of both of those things. And I think AI is going to be much the same. Well, hey, as I'm looking through our list, lots of folks here, and including lots of ones we recognize. So thank you all to everybody who showed up and to ask such good questions. We had several student questions there. So Kian, Ben, Chloe, really appreciated that. Nick, I think I saw your question there as well. And if you don't know anything about Unbound, you can learn more about us at beunbound.us. We have an Ascend program, which is an education program that we hope mixes these things, that allows you to leverage some technology, but does not sacrifice the in-person part. And I will tell you that we are actually working tirelessly at this point, and in some cases almost around the clock, to think about the implications AI has, figure out how we can use them, but use them in a way that deepens our ability to teach our students real knowledge, deepens our ability to have real human contact with our students, and deepens our ability to do real things. And so, yes, technologically, Ascend will allow you to stay embedded in your local community and then get some content piped to where you are. But Ascend will also put you on top of a mountain at Capstone where the air is thin. Ascend will take you to the shores of the Gulf Coast where you have the sand between your toes, which is a very physical experience, especially when it's always colder than we expect it to be. And Ascend will also take you to a beautiful spot in Michigan where you're going to see greener grass and beautiful purple flowers like you've never seen before. And those things together is what's going to be important, right? In those physical places, you're going to be reminded that you are embodied, that God is the ultimate creator, that nothing you see on a screen equals that. You're going to meet fellow people made in the image of God. One of the big things we teach in Unbound, and you heard Andrew reflect here, was the Imago Dei. And so we're going to say every single person you meet is made in the Imago Dei. AI is not. It's a big implication. If you shoot somebody coming through your door, even to endanger your family, and there's a lot of problems with that. If you think Skynet's going to happen, just know that there's no theological or moral implications if you shoot a Boston Dynamics robot coming through your door to endanger your family, right? You can totally cut loose on that, and there's no moral implications there because it's not made in the image of God. And so, we have to remember that we are real people. And so Ascend will teach that. And then Ascend is also dedicated to teaching you real stuff so that you can decide whether the Russians sent bears into space or not. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all of your great questions. We will look forward to, if you're a student or you're connected to Unbound, seeing you at the next event. If you're new to this program, we'd be happy to see you at the next event. So go to our website and we'll be happy to talk to you. Hope you all have a good rest of your day. If the robot comes knocking at the door, think carefully before you answer it. So thanks, David. Appreciate your help in all this.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
So if you have made it all the way through this entire discussion on AI, first of all, thank you for watching all the way through this video. Second of all, you of all people should definitely hit the subscribe button down below, because the next video that we have coming out on the channel is also going to be about AI. Specifically, I'm going to be seeing if AI can help make part of my job a little easier, or potentially even do part of my day-to-day job. So if that sounds interesting to you, you definitely want to get subscribed. And if you just enjoy hearing us talk about AI and want to see more videos of us tackling it from different perspectives, definitely leave us a comment down below and let us know. That's the only way that we're going to know what kind of videos you guys want to see from us. So once again, hit that subscribe button. We're going to have more videos coming out really soon. Hope to see you there.